Save title. Now India is looking for silver again. Tonight, something snapped in the silver market. Not the chart you stare at, not the paper price they flash on your screen, the real market. India just came back for silver again, and they didn't come quietly. They came with a premium so loud it's basically a siren. While the spot quote was sitting in the low to mid 70s, buyers were dangling offers in the low 80s. That's not normal tightness. That's a system paying a ransom. And here's the part that should make you sit up. This isn't just one country. China is also sniffing around for direct routes, cutting around the usual pipes, trying to get metal without begging the same middlemen who can shut the valve. So the question isn't, is silver in a bubble? The question is, why are the biggest manufacturing nations acting like silver is a supply chain weapon? Welcome back, team. No fluff, no warm-up. We're going straight into what just happened, what it means, and what we need to watch next. First, let's decode the signal. When a buyer pays an extra $8, $9, $10 above spot, they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because they're scared of time. Time is the hidden cost. When you're building panels, electronics, high voltage gear, anything that needs conductivity, you can't ship, maybe. You ship metal, or your factory goes silent, and silence is expensive. So when a serious buyer pays up, it's a confession. I can't wait. I don't trust the pipeline. I'd rather overpay than stop. Now zoom out. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Trade lines are getting chopped up, access is getting filtered. Some countries can't buy from some partners the way they used to. Officially, it's policy. In reality, it's a choke point, and silver is the canary, because silver isn't a luxury input anymore. It's a tiny part of everything until it's missing. Then it becomes the whole story. And let's talk about the middleman problem. Most people think silver is a simple chain. Mine it, refine it, sell it, done. That's the fairy tale. The real chain is layered with brokers, financing desks, vault operators, allocated promises, shipping bottlenecks, and paperwork that can be slowed with a single signature. One delay, and suddenly a factory schedule turns into a panic email. So what do smart buyers do when they smell a squeeze? They bypass. They go looking for relationships, direct deals, longer-term supply agreements, metal with fewer hands on it. That's what this new behavior screams. And it's not subtle, because if supply was comfortable, you wouldn't pay a premium. You just buy the cheapest source and move on. Premium is the truth serum. Now, I want to be careful with certainty here. Fact, buyers are offering materially above spot to secure silver. Fact, multiple major economies are exploring or using routes that reduce reliance on typical intermediaries. Interpretation, that's a sign of stress in physical availability, trust, or both. And if trust is cracking, price can lag reality for longer than you think. Because paper price is a headline, physical price is a negotiation. And negotiations are getting aggressive. Here's the mistake most people make right now. They look at a down day in spot and they assume demand is cooling. But demand doesn't disappear, it reroutes. When a market gets politicized, when access becomes conditional, the flow changes shape. It stops being about cheapest. It becomes about dependable. So we need to watch one thing more than the tick chart. We need to watch the gap between where silver is quoted and where silver is sourced. The gap between paper and physical. The gap between one region's price and another region's urgency. That gap is where the stress lives. And when that gap widens, it doesn't whisper. It forces decisions. Now watch this. If silver was truly in a speculative bubble, you'd see the opposite behavior. You'd see buyers step back. You'd see premiums collapse. You'd see inventory overflow. You'd see sellers fighting each other. But what we're seeing is buyers paying up for immediacy. That's not a bubble signal. That's a scarcity signal. Not guaranteed, not absolute, but strongly suggestive. And if we're wrong, where will it show first? It will show in premiums. It will show in delivery times. It will show in spreads between regions, narrowing back to boring. So we track that. We don't guess. We measure. Now, let's talk about why India matters here. India isn't just buying for jewelry. That narrative is outdated. India is manufacturing more, electrifying more, upgrading grids, scaling solar, scaling electronics. And all of that drinks silver in tiny sips, until the cup is empty. When a country like that pays above spot, it's not because they want a better deal. It's because they want certainty. And certainty is getting expensive. China matters for the same reason, but with a different twist. China is already a machine that consumes metals. When it starts exploring purchases outside its usual influence lanes, it's signaling friction. Maybe friction in settlement, maybe friction in shipping, maybe friction in who can sell to who, maybe friction in politics. We don't need the exact cause to read the behavior. Behavior is the data, and the data says major buyers are acting like silver is strategic. Now let's bring markets into the picture without getting lost in noise. Rates wiggle, the dollar wiggles, equities wobble, volatility yawns. That stuff matters, but it's not the core story. The core story is this. Silver is behaving like a commodity with a security premium, like oil during a blockade, like chips during a sanction cycle, like gas when pipelines get repaired for months. When supply becomes a question of permission, not just price, you get this kind of premium behavior. So here's the tension. And this is where retention lives, so stay with me. Spot can drop while physical tightens, because spot is a paper auction. Physical is a logistics war. One can look calm while the other is on fire. That contradiction is exactly how people get fooled. They see red candles and they think the story is over, but the story can be starting. Now, I'm going to put the bubble question in a box. People love the word bubble because it sounds smart and it ends arguments. But bubble is lazy if we don't define what's driving the move. Is the move driven by retail hype, or is it driven by industrial necessity? Those are different beasts. Retail hype pops fast. Industrial necessity grinds for years. So the better question is, what's the market paying for, growth or safety? Because if buyers are paying premiums for delivery, they're paying for safety. Safety from downtime. Safety from sanctions. Safety from your order is delayed. And when safety becomes the motive, the bid is stubborn. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but if spot is down, doesn't that mean the market disagrees? Not necessarily. It means the paper market can be pushed around. It means macro funds can de-risk. It means someone can sell futures into thin liquidity. Paper can move fast. Metal moves slow. And slow is what factories live on. Now let's get tactical. What should we actually watch from here? 1. Regional premiums. If buyers keep paying above, quote, stress is persistent. 2. Delivery windows. If lead times stretch, the tightness is real. 3. Policy language. Any hint of export controls, import restrictions, or strategic stockpiles turns this from market story to national story. 4. Substitution attempts. If manufacturers start talking about switching materials, it means silver became painful. But here's the catch. Silver is hard to substitute when you need conductivity and reliability. You can reduce usage. You can redesign. But you can't cheat physics. So if substitution talk rises, it's not instantly bearish. It can be a sign of stress. Now, we also need to be honest about risk. Possible risk, premiums fade quickly if this was a temporary scramble, not a sustained shortage. Possible risk, demand slows if manufacturing slows. Possible risk, financial conditions tighten and everyone sells commodities as a basket. So we don't marry a narrative. We track signals. This is educational. We manage risk. Now let's pull the thread that most people ignore. When trade gets weaponized, the price stops being the only filter. Access becomes the filter. And access creates 2 markets. A market for people who can buy easily, and a market for people who have to pay to get in. That second market is where premiums live. And premiums are a message. They say, there is silver, but not for everyone at the same cost. Now imagine this continues. If India is paying up, if China is paying up, if other industrial buyers follow, we can get a bidding war that doesn't show up cleanly in spot until later. Because spot is one venue. Physical is many venues. And the tightest venue sets the pain. So here's an open loop for you. If the visible price stays calm but invisible premiums keep rising, what happens when the visible market finally catches up? That's when the move gets violent. Not because of hype, because of realization. Realization is the spark. Fear of shortage is the fuel. Now, I want you to think like a procurement manager for a second. You run a factory, you've got contracts, you've got penalties, you've got customers. Your job isn't to buy at the perfect price. Your job is to never run out. So if you hear even a whisper that supply might get constrained, what do? You buy early, and you don't buy a little. You buy enough to sleep. That's why premiums appear before headlines. That's why premiums are early warning. Now, you might ask, why aren't mainstream outlets screaming about this? Because they live on the screen price. They don't live in the warehouse. They talk about tickers. They don't talk about delivery. So the real edge, the information edge, is watching the behavior of real buyers. And right now, real buyers are paying up. So what do we do with that? We don't panic. We don't gamble. We build a watch list of signals. And we stay alert for the moment the market admits what the supply chain already knows. Now let me hit you with the psychological trap. They will try to distract you with side stories. They'll talk about stocks. They'll talk about the dollar. They'll talk about risk on, risk off. They'll talk about speculators. And all of that can be true while missing the core. The core is metal availability, because you can print money. You can't print ounces. You can promise delivery. You can't promise physics. And if industrial demand needs silver and trade lines get messy, the market has one release valve: price. Now, I want to bring it back to us. We're not here to chase candles. We're here to read the map before the crowd gets the memo. So here's what I want from you. In the comments, answer this. If spot is in the 70s, but physical is being bid in the 80s, which number is real? And second, if a country starts paying premiums to bypass middlemen, is that a one-off or the start of a new normal? Drop your take below. I read them and it helps us sharpen the signal. Now, quick and clean, CTA. If you want more breakdowns like this, facts first, then the pressure points, hit subscribe. Short, simple. Join us so you don't miss the next signal. Because this story isn't done, it's evolving. And the next move won't be announced on a chart. It'll be announced in premiums, contracts, and quiet calls from buyers who can't afford to wait. So keep your eyes on the gap. That's where the truth lives. Now, let's go one layer deeper, because this is where most people get fooled. A lot of viewers hear premium and they assume it's just a retail markup, like a shop charging extra because it can. But when the premium shows up at the bulk buyer level, it's different. That's not a collector problem. That's an industrial problem. That's a factory saying, we'll pay more if you can deliver now in size with certainty. And that tells us something brutal. The market is splitting into two realities. Reality one is the screen, a clean quote that can move with a single paper order. Reality two is the street, the real bars that have to clear shipping, insurance, compliance, and time. When those two realities diverge, weird things happen. Spot can look weak while physical tightens. Headlines can call it speculation while procurement teams are sweating. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The physical market doesn't need everyone to panic. It only needs a few huge buyers to lose trust at the same time. Because silver doesn't sit in one giant tank like oil. It's scattered in thousands of places, in vaults with labels and products and accounts that might be allocated on paper, but not simple to grab in reality. So when big buyers decide they want metal with no question marks, they don't just buy. They vacuum. Now, think about the flow of metal like a river. Most of the time it's calm, it moves through familiar channels. Everyone gets their share. But if you drop a dam in the middle, restrictions, payment friction, shipping headaches, the river doesn't stop, it reroutes. And rerouting creates premiums because the metal still needs to reach factories that can't miss deadlines. Now watch this next clue. The spread between regions is the market's lie detector. If one hub is paying more for real metal than another hub is quoting for paper, that's not an opinion. That's a warning. Arbitrage is supposed to close that gap. But arbitrage isn't free if you can't move metal smoothly. So if spreads stay wide, it suggests something deeper. Metal can't easily flow to close the gap, or the rules make it painful. That's when spreads become a stress fracture, not just a trade. So the next time you see a calm chart, ask yourself, is the spread calm too? Or is the spread screaming while the chart naps? Now about this weaponized idea. Weaponized doesn't mean tanks, it means leverage. If you can block someone's inputs, you can slow their output. If you can slow their output, you can weaken their economy. And silver is a perfect target because the pain shows up as delays and shortages, not as a headline at the gas pump. Slow pain is politically convenient. So when we see countries trying to buy silver through cleaner, more direct routes, we're seeing the chessboard. They're paying to reduce dependency. They're paying to remove permission risk. Now here's the open loop that matters. If buyers are already paying up above spot, what happens if spot dips again? Do they step back? Or do they treat it like a clearance sale and buy harder because they care about supply, not sentiment? That answer tells us whether demand is elastic or inelastic. Elastic demand says, I'll wait. Inelastic demand says, I'll pay. Premium behavior looks inelastic. Now we also stay honest about risk. Possible risk? This premium was a temporary scramble and it fades fast. Possible risk? Manufacturing cools and urgency drops. Possible risk? Financial markets tighten and funds sell metals as a basket, even while physical stays tight. So we don't marry a story. We track signals, premiums, delivery windows, spreads, direct sourcing behavior. That's harder to fake than a quote on a screen. Now, let's talk about the next escalation, because this is the cliffhanger. Stage 1 is quiet premiums. That's where we are. Stage 2 is long-term contracts. Metal gets reserved before it ever hits open shelves. Stage 3 is priority. Big buyers get served first, smaller buyers wait. And when that happens, the public doesn't get a headline. They get a back order notice. So keep your eyes on the gap, because if the gap keeps widening, the next move won't start with hype. It will start with quiet contracts, and quiet contracts are how shortages become official after it's already too late. One more thing before we cut. Don't get distracted by the daily circus, rates, the dollar, stock indexes, all that noise. Those markets can swing silver around on paper without changing 1 ounce of real availability. Paper can dump in seconds, metal can't teleport. So when you see volatility, ask the only question that matters. Are real buyers still paying up? If the answer is yes, then the drop is a discount, not a defeat. And here's where it gets spicy. The moment big buyers stop shopping and start locking, the game changes. They don't just buy today's needs, they pre-buy next quarter, next year, the year after. That's when the open market feels empty, even if mines are still producing, because production is already spoken for. So watch for the next headline that sounds harmless. Strategic purchasing, inventory build, supply chain resilience. Those are code words. If we see those words stack up, the next phase starts, and it won't be polite. And when that phase starts, we'll see it first in premiums, not in tweets, so stay close. Subscribe if you want the next signal the moment it appears, before the crowd realizes what just moved in front of them.